Hello, welcome to video training. We'll be doing Accounts Payable Level 1 Chapter 2, Entering Bills. Okay, from the main menu, select Accounts Payable. Okay, prior to this, we went in vendor maintenance and we added all our vendors. Well, now we're going to go in and actually put some bills in. Let's go into posting. Now we're going to have a couple different examples. First example, we're going to go in and just enter a bill that for a vendor we already put in the first chapter. Then what we're going to do is enter a brand new vendor and enter a bill. And then what we'll do is enter a bill and pay it all at the same time. So let's do step number one. Just put a bill in for a vendor that's out there already. Select Enter Bill. If you have the general ledger system turned on, you'll see this particular screen. Okay, now it wants to know who my vendor is. We have various different ways of looking this vendor up. Suppose I want to put in a bill for a Verizon. I can just type in VER and it goes right to Verizon. So let's assume I want to put a bill in for Verizon and I just typed in VER and Verizon came up. I now will hit the Enter key and it tells me this is Verizon. There's the city, state, zip, and telephone number. You need to give it an invoice number. It can be alphanumeric. The description is not mandatory, although sometimes it's good to put in what it is. Obviously, the invoice date is extremely important. The invoice date is going to take the terms field, which is 30, and add 30 days to this and make that the date to pay. Now, I can change the terms date to whatever I want, or I can physically type in whatever date I wish. For example, if you read what it says, this pay date equals invoice date plus terms if blank. So if I don't fill it in, it will calculate it for me based on the terms. If I do fill it in, it'll leave whatever I put in. So let's put in the 15th. It defaults to today's date. What is the amount of the invoice? Let's say $500. Now the next question is this a payable, it's a hold, or is it paid? Payable means that we want to pay this at this particular time. So it'll add 30 to this, or I need to key in a date. Hold means it's on a hold status. What that means is that it'll never get paid. If you do a check run and you say, okay, pay all my bills that are due up to this date, it will never ever pay a bill on hold unless you release it. So if you're putting a bill in, typically that you want to control, you don't want to pay it until you physically release it, not just by a particular date, then you just put it on hold. It will never get paid unless you release the hold. If you want to pay it right now and cut a check, you would select 4. Let's put it in as payable. Date received is the date that I put it in. This is the date that you received it. For example, it's good to know the date of the invoice. It's also good to know that this is the date I received it for a particular reason. Suppose it just came in and the due date was in 2 days. Well, you may want to be able to call the supplier and say, look, we just got the bill in. How can we pay it within 2 days to take advantage of the discount? So this is the date that you typically received it. If you want to apply any type of a discount, you could, whether it be by a rate or whether it be by a discount amount. Now, if I hit F12 here, it'll automatically add 30 to this and make that the date that I need to pay this. So let's just hit F12, OK to post. My general ledger entries are being made here. Here's my utility expense, which is being debited, and my credit to accounts payable. That bill is now entered. Now, if I wish to put a bill in for Mass Electric, I can just type in MAS. It goes to Mass Electric. Or I could select and pick from the list. Let's enter a bill in for Yamaha. And there again, we're just going to call it new bill. And we'll put in the description. Maybe the date, the invoice date actually is 04/01. It's $600. And let's go in and put it as paid. We want to put the bill in and we want to pay it. So we don't really need to select anything else. From this point on, if this is what I want to do, I have my invoice date, I have my invoice number. I could key in a description or not key in a description. I am now going to hit F12. Now, because I said I'm going to pay it, it's asking me what checking account I want to use. I can type in the checking account I want to use or select the one. These are all my checking accounts. Now it's saying, do you want the computer to print the check or do you want to manually write it out? Maybe I've paid this last week, I paid it 2 weeks ago, and I just want to put it in the computer. I don't want the computer to print a check. If I say yes, the computer will print the check. The default is no. You can change that default to be yes if normally you want the computer to print the checks. It comes up and says, okay, based on this here, this is the next check number that you should be using. If in fact it's not, you can type in any check number that has not already been using. If it is an auto deduction, you would just select auto deduction. It will not use a check number. It will automatically assign a auto deduction number. At this time, it's giving me one last time, okay to post. Yes, I want to post it. Now this is in my system. It's in there as paid. And we can see that it's been taken out of my checking account. And obviously, that's the account that's being used. Okay. Now, one other thing is, suppose I'm looking at a particular vendor here, and I'm trying to say, well, I don't remember if I put the bill in or not. I want to check it out. You can look up any vendor by just selecting the vendor you want to look at or typing in the vendor, or doing a lookup. Here's all my suppliers, everybody in my accounts payable system. If I want to look at Yamaha, I can just select it. Now, there's a couple of buttons over here I can use. For example, detail history. This shows me a complete history of that. So if I wasn't sure if I put a bill in or not, there it is right there. It's paid. I can select it, and it tells me more information. There's the date of the invoice. There's the date we received it. There's the date we paid it. There's the invoice amount. There's the paid amount. These are my general ledger entries, which I can select and look at the entries that were made. This is the bank and the check number that was used. If I wish to see checks, what checks have I written? Well, I've only wrote one check, the check that I just wrote, check number 210 from Bank Zero. So you can select on any line and get as much information as you wish. Okay, let's do one other thing. Let's suppose I need to update the vendor. In other words, maybe they sent me a thing saying their email address changed, their telephone number changed. You can select Update Vendor. It'll go to your vendor record. And maybe you want to change the terms. Maybe from this point on, I want to use 15 days. Maybe I want to change the account number. Maybe it was wrong. Maybe I want to add something to my user-defined template that we created. So you can change any other information in here. You would now hit change if you changed it. And now get back, and now we've changed that. Okay, so we've actually gone in and we've entered a bill, said that we want to pay it at a certain date. We've also entered another bill and paid it right when we entered it in. Now let's go in and add a new vendor and put a bill in all at the same time. We can do that by selecting the drop-down or hitting the space bar. If you hit the space bar, it will go to Add New Vendor, exactly what we did in the vendor maintenance program. Hit Enter, hit Tab. It will now go to my vendor maintenance program. This is exactly what we did in Chapter 1. You can put in a vendor number or not put in a vendor number. Let's just say it's new 4. And we're going to give it our vendor name. And obviously you'd key in as little or as much as you want. Okay, now you can fill this in or not fill it in. There again, we can override that anytime we want. If I put 15, now if I don't key in an account number and I have the general ledger option turned on, it will come up and force me to put an account number in. If I know the account number I want to use, there again, I can type it in or select it from my chart of accounts. So now this is all I really need to enter. I've entered the description, my address. I'm going to say add. Now I also can update my user-defined data. Now this vendor is now in my system. Now I'll hit the escape key, and now I want to add a bill to this new vendor. So I've created a vendor that wasn't in my accounts payable system, and I'm also adding a bill at the same time. And it saves the invoice date as the last date that I used. So the last date that I typed was 401. Well, it's still 401. Many times you'll be putting in bills and you'll be backdating them. If that's not the date, then obviously you would type in whatever date you wish. Type in your amount. Now, if that's all I want to do, I don't need to type any further. If in fact I want to pay this in 15 days, if in fact the bill is $200 and I want to make it a payable, which means I'm not paying it now, I want to pay it in 15 days, all I need to do is select F12. In my system, there's my general ledger. That is now in there. Now, if I need to enter another bill, maybe it's a different date. Hit the Enter key. Now, see what happens. We're going to use the exact same invoice number. We may use a different invoice date. And I'm going to put this one on hold. It's going to come up and it's going to say this invoice number is already used. That's so if you've already put this in prior, you may want to say no here and then look at the detail to see, did you really put this in? Are you making a mistake? Are you entering the same bill in twice? Or occasionally, you may have multiple bills with the same invoice number. So the default is no. If I hit the Enter key, it is not going to add this bill. I would now maybe want to do a detail history, take a look at it to see if in fact I put this bill in already and I'm possibly making a mistake. If in fact I do want to add another invoice to this vendor using the exact same invoice number, then I would say yes. So if I say yes, now it will allow me to do it, and I'm saying okay, here's my entries, and now that bill's in there. If I hit the Enter key and look at the detail, this is a new vendor we just created, and here's our two bills. One is on hold, which means the only way we're going to pay it is if we release it. The other, we're going to be paying, it's going to say it's due on 4/27. Now, if I want to enter another bill, let's go over here and enter one more bill for this vendor. And we're going to pay this bill. The invoice date, the amount we want to pay. And now we're just going to say pay, and it wants to know our checking account. It wants to know if I want the computer to print the check, or did we already write the check out, or we're going to write it by hand. It wants to know the next check number, which should be 211. And now we're all set, and that's now in there. So it's relatively simple. What we've done here is we've added some new vendors. We've added a new vendor, put 3 bills in. If you need to put in a bill for another vendor, let's say we want to use Mass Electric. Now Mass Electric works a little differently. I'm going to put this bill in here, new bill, a description. And let's just go in here and okay. Now, maybe on this particular bill, I want to actually key in the date that I want to pay it. So if that's the case, I can hit the Tab key, put in the date that I received it, go over here and say, okay, I want to pay this on 03, nope, not 03, 04, say 30/08. So whether you want to key in the date that you want to pay it, whether you want to just change that to say 10 days, 15 days. Now, if I change that there, it only will change it for that one invoice, that one bill that I'm putting in. It will not change it back in the record. If I want to change it back in the record, I would hit Update Vendor, change it in the vendor record, and now that would be what it is every time I enter a bill. If I just want to enter it and change this terms just for this one particular invoice, it would just change it here. It will not update the actual vendor record. I've entered all the information I want. I'm hitting F12, OK to post. Now this is what we called a multi-post. This is something that we discussed in Chapter 1. And this is where you would be setting this up in General Ledger under multi-post. But what this is I told the system for Mass Electric I want to distribute my expenses to 4 different accounts. What I did say is that I put in $1,000. That's all going to payables. That's what I owe. I have 25% going to this account here, which is called General Electricity Expense Account. I have one that's called New Boat Sales, which is 15%. I have pot sales, and I have service. So it automatically distributed my accounts. I can change this to whatever I want. I can add new account numbers if I wish. I'm going to hit F12. Okay, let's just do one more scenario. Let's just say we're going to use the drop down. There again, you know how to add something new. Let's pick any vendor that we wish. If I want to check the update any vendors, that's that. If I want to check the history, that's the history of everything that's done. If I want to see checks that were written, here's all the checks that were written. If I need more information, I double click on a line, click on a line. It tells me exactly date of the invoice, date it was paid, check numbers, general ledger, any information that you wish to know. If I wish, I can actually just change vendors. If I go back up here, it'll go right to the top, and maybe I don't want to put in a bill. Maybe I saw that I put that in already. When you hit the Enter key, that's when it goes out and says, okay, here's the bill you're doing. Put in our invoice number, description's not mandatory, our date, the amount. There again, that's all I really need to enter. If in fact I want to pay this in 30 days, which is what I want to do, I don't need to be tabbing through any other fields. I can just click on this here, or hit F12. That's now in my system. This is the accounts that are going to be hit. If in fact I want to change this, I can. I can change this. Maybe I want to change this to $400. And maybe now I want to use another account number. There again, if you read what it says, double click. And maybe I want to also use this for that. And we're going to do $100 here. You have to be in balance, obviously. And F12. And now we've made another bill. Okay. So what we've done is enter bills. And we've went in and posted 2 or 3 different scenarios of putting bills in. That concludes this section. Now we'll move on to our next section.